I'm Ryan Dombrowski.
I'm the Ninja Fat Man from Doom Ninja Podcast,
a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network.
Just like the show you're listening to now.
The opinions expressed are those of each individual host.
Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And get ready, because geekiness begins in 3,
2,
1.
This is it. The part of your week where you get to put your headphones on, relax, and listen to a bunch of geeks geek out about geeky things. They're witty.
He loves him some Katy Perry because she kissed a girl and she liked it.
They're crazy.
I like Nickelback personally, but, I'm the fuddy-duddy who likes episode 1.
And sometimes I leave you wondering, what the f***?
I'm pretty sure that here we were starting the hashtag movement, Bring Back Slave Ferrell.
Gonna Geek Productions presents the official GonnaGeek.com show.
Hello and welcome to episode 189 of the official GonnaGeek.com show. My name is Jondrew, and with me, of course, is the king of the podcast, Chris Ferrell.
That's correct. I am the king of the podcast, here with my good friend, hashtag Steven Wrongdrew.
That's right. Apparently, I am hashtag Steven Wrongdrew, even though I'm right. Empire.
No, you're wrong.
No, I'm right. But for all of you Stargate Pioneer fans, we have terrible news for you today. Unfortunately, Stargate Pioneer has told me firsthand that he will no longer podcast with me, and thus he is not here tonight. Now, that's not true at all. SP is just away. Unfortunately, other prior commitments pulled him away. He'll be back next week in theory. But we have our second fiddle Sunkast here tonight.
Disappointing the people of the Gonna Geek chat since 2017.
No, seriously, thanks so much for coming on here tonight, Sunkast. That's awesome. It's great to have you back, and we always appreciate you stepping in here for whoever's away or just as a force, so thank you so much.
I love being here.
Now, how are things going? I know that you usually are found on the Twitter sphere, but I noticed that you shut down your Twitter account.
I shut it down.
No,
I'm
just kidding.
What?
I'm
News?
trying to start.
I'm pretty sure you tweeted at me the other day.
Pretty sure you just tweeted right now. No, I want to give you a moment here to plug and promote yourself, because we usually do that at the end, but every now and then I like to let you talk about yourself and tell everybody where they can find you at.
I'm Sunkast. You can find me on the GFQ network. If you go to gfqnetwork.com, that's where you can find all the shows that we do there. We have a variety of shows. We do Mat Men, which is a wrestling show. We've got a hair loss show on there. So if you're suffering and you got some hair loss and you need some help, we got a nice program there for you. We've got a tech show called What the Tech, and that's all found on the GFQ network.
Are you podcast award winning?
I believe we are in some form, somehow, some way. We're some sort of award.
That's true. And you know who else is award winning? The king of the podcast, Chris Ferrell.
I didn't win anything. It was the Diamond Group that helped a lot of people win things. Damn that Diamond Group.
Oh, so before we get into our news, I have a fun little topic that I'd like to talk about. As you all know, me and Windows 10 are just like tight. We're essentially one and the same. Windows 10 and I, people are like, hey, is that Windows 10 or is that Steven? That's what it is. That's how tight we are. And no, I have ranted a little bit about Windows 10 before. I really wanted to like Windows 10 before, and I still do. And as you know, I've had a couple of hiccups recently, and I decided I'm going to go ahead and try to get that creator update and just hope for the best, because let's be honest, it's the latest and the greatest. I got to get there eventually. So I had that put on last week, the creator update. I talked about that a couple episodes back. And if you've ever watched the video side of the show, you'll see to the right side of the window, there's a bar. Chris, can you point to the bar for the video viewers? There's a bar there. And every week I have to go into Photoshop and configure that. That's how I do that. Well, today, when I went to set up that sidebar, it's a text bar that has a bunch of information on there. It told me that my fonts were missing all of a sudden.
What?
Yeah, so I went and I looked, and the majority of my fonts were there, but some were missing. I had to go to my 8.1 install, luckily I had it there, and copy those fonts over back to my Windows 10 font folder. For some reason, some of my fonts disappeared because I updated Windows. This is not the first time this has happened for me. I had that actually happen early on. I think it was last year or the year before, early on within the Windows 10 days, I think. I've had that happen before, and it's so frustrating. Don't mess with my fonts. Like, if I didn't have that backup, I would be sitting there now having to download things randomly again. So annoying, so irritating. I want to like you, Windows 10, but you just keep screwing me over. Anyways, I wanted to rant. Chris, you're being remarkably quiet, actually.
I'm sure that Satya Nadella is listening to this right now going, up. That's Stephen Wrongdrew's got a point here. We should listen. Oh, wait, no, he's Stephen Wrongdrew. We don't listen to him.
So you and Windows 10 are BFFs then, is that what you're saying?
Actually, in all seriousness, the only Windows 10 issue I've really had is that ManyCam no longer plays nice with my Logitech C922. Other than that, knock on wood, there's some wood on my desk there. I haven't had any Windows 10 issues yet. However, it is ready to install the creators update. I had it delayed so we could do the podcast. So I'm sure when I come and fire up my computer tomorrow after it does all the patch installs, I'm going to come down and nothing works. And then I'm going to blame you on Twitter, Stephen, because you have tempted the fates for me.
Back up your fonts. Go ahead and back them up. But no, seriously, this is one of the weird things because like a lot of the problems that I've had along the way have been things because I do really complicated things. So I've given the benefit of the doubt here and there. And I've converted from being like, I just don't like Windows 10 over to Windows 10's okay. I want to like Windows 10. And that's because of a lot of my bugs being because I do complicated things. But font loss is not complicated. Lots of people do things with fonts, and there's like two options. Number one, you back up your fonts, or number two, you take Mike JPEG to Raw's advice in the chat, which he says he has just deleted all of his fonts. So I like that idea. That works. Just delete them all. No fonts.
I just use Wingdings for everything.
Anyways, it frustrated me, and it made me very happy.
This is a new feature of Windows 10, didn't you know? It resets all your app defaults. Anything that was set as a setting on your computer is now set back to default. It's a feature of these updates. We've seen it with the anniversary update. We've seen it with the November update. And now we're seeing it with the creators update. This is a feature of the new Windows 10 updates. Anytime there's a new update, it's going to reset the app defaults for you. Isn't that great?
Sunkast, how do you think Edge keeps gaining in market share?
It sure as hell isn't because people are actually freaking using it.
I only use it on my Surface Pro 4 because it doesn't kill my battery like Chrome there.
I'm sure the only people that use it are people like you that are using it on a Chromebook and people that want to watch Netflix in 1080p.
By the way, in the chat, Albert has said something that I think could actually be changed for a lot of Windows 10. Is he says Edge is a hot mess. So there you go. Edge is a hot mess. Oh man,
that's pretty universal, by the way. Even diehard Microsoft bloggers think that Edge is a hot mess.
Yeah, anyways, the font thing really bugs me because it's like the last thing that I wanted to have to do was go copy my fonts over again. Like it's annoying.
You're not alone in that, Stephen.
Have you learned your lesson? Do you have them readily accessible from this point forward? Have you backed them up to the cloud so you can go and pull them as soon as you determine that you need them?
You know, here's the thing about that. Like I said, I've been wanting to like Windows 10. So I have been primarily operating in Windows 10 for like a couple of months now. And even now, right now I'm recording this using Windows 8.1. As soon as I'm done this, I'm going to reboot back to Windows 10. So I'm trying to sit here and think whether or not I actually did add any fonts under Windows 10 since I first kind of made the attempt at the transition a couple months ago. I don't think I have, but if I have, I'm going to eventually come across this where I'm going to go edit something and be like, oh, look, it's missing. Got to re-download it.
Well, this is a repeatable pattern now with these Windows 10 updates. We've seen this multiple times, and this is just the latest in a string of these updates where Windows does something and it resets these app defaults. A lot of people were complaining that their resume playback feature in VLC wasn't working anymore. And it's because whatever Windows 10 changed, It reset all these defaults, screwed something up on the system. And this is one of the reasons why I don't run Windows 10, because I would have anxiety running Windows 10, wondering, is this the update that breaks something and resets all the defaults that I've had set? It's like, I don't want to go through that.
No, and that's a great point. And you hit it on the head. This is not the first time this has happened. And that happened. It reset all my freaking Windows and stuff. I got to go figure out how I find the Windows photo viewer, because that's still way better than the default app that's in there. And if it's still there, maybe they removed that too. Maybe that's why my fonts are gone.
You know what? You should just start doing all your work in the new Paint 3D application that they have.
And there's I should, but there's
With
one
your HoloLens.
There's one reason why I'm really trying, like a big reason why I'm trying to move to Windows 10 is because the 8.1 features are very quickly being neglected. For example, OneDrive, the Windows 10 OneDrive is way better than the 8.1. You don't have to have a Microsoft account to activate. So you don't have to have your Microsoft account linked to your Windows account under Windows 10 to run OneDrive. With 8.1, you have to. And so it's just like, it's things like that they're now intentionally neglecting 8.1 to try to move people over. Otherwise, I would probably just go back to 8.1 again. But anyways, I've ranted enough.
I'm not being facetious here. You actually use OneDrive? Because,
I do.
Because all I really use it for is loading clips onto my soundboard for podcasts where I need to run a soundboard. That's about it.
OneDrive is by far the least expensive cloud storage if you have multiple users in your family like me.
Okay.
You can do an Office 360.
curious.
You can do an Office 365 subscription for your family and then share that amongst everybody, like up to 5 users, and each of those 5 users will have 1 terabyte of storage on OneDrive, all for $100 a year.
That's exactly
That's
what
not
I
bad.
do, Sunkast. Exactly what I do.
And then the other thing that I do is that I mainly use OneDrive for is for photo backup. I have the application on my phone and it just automatically backs up photos right to OneDrive, and I can view that right on my computer.
See, that's what I use Amazon for myself, is with the Amazon app. And since I'm a Prime subscriber, I get unlimited photo backup. So between that and Google, everything backs up as soon as I'm back on Wi-Fi again.
Yeah, I'm kind of... Unfortunately, with Google, it's just too expensive for me. Like, because when you look at the price tag and you convert it, especially to Canadian dollars, it's just too much. It's just way too much for me, especially given the amount of stuff I want to have stored up there. I do video podcasts and I do use OneDrive in a sense for backing up. So you can imagine how much storage I use, right?
Well, you do have a Pixel phone, so your video and photo storage off of your Pixel are free and don't count against your quota. Don't forget that.
Don't get me started on that. That's not... It's only stuff taken with the Pixel.
Yes, they know you're going to try and game the system. What are you doing? Dumping your video on your Pixel and then pushing it up to Google Drive?
No,
Wait, you are, aren't you?
What I mean though is, like, if I end up setting it to automatically back up like my Hangouts or my Viber folder or whatever, that counts against my storage. So there you go. That becomes a problem.
That only counts against your storage if you send the high quality versions of them. If
Which-
you use the standard quality or
That's
whatever.
true. That's
Then it
absolutely...
does not count.
But when Sunkast sends me face swap pictures, I want them on high quality, Chris.
Or when... Yeah, okay, we'll go with that.
There is actually a footnote with that. With the Pixel, you can't shut off that because you get free storage. It actually, it's grayed out. I mean, unless there's some other way that's in there. But when I first configured it, it didn't give me the option because it says you get free storage.
If you get free storage, why would you turn it off?
Because of what I just said, the Viber and stuff counts against it.
You use Viber?
I do. I use Viber.
Is that something that you use for your sex hotline?
I do.
I was going to
That's
say,
right.
is this an adult app?
No,
What is
it's,
Viber, Steven?
it's just a messenger, actually. It's just a messenger, like
just
WhatsApp or anything.
a messenger.
But anyways, let's go ahead and move on to our news. Here we go.
Gee, you quickly got off that.
This week in the news, we're going to go ahead and continue that Microsoft train. That's right. Oh, man. Microsoft has done so well with their operating systems. The rumors are they're introducing another operating system, and it's not Windows 11 or anything of the such. It is essentially a rival for the Chromebook OS. That's right. If you've seen the Chrome OS, that's the one that the Chromebooks all run on. They're meant to use a lot of stuff that's app-based, cloud-based, things like that. That's the intention of the Chromebook. Well, the rumor is that Microsoft is looking to get into that game a bit, and they are working on a cloud-based OS. Now, the thing with this is that they're going to make it so that it runs apps that are meant for like phones, anything from the Microsoft Store, essentially. But that's the word on the street, is they are looking to build this extra OS and are in the process of doing that, and they want to take a bite out of that Chromebook market. The rumored spec sheet, which was leaked, shows very similar hardware specifications to the Chromebook, thus the very obvious picture that they are trying to take after the Chromebook. I know, Sunkast, you have commented to me a couple of times about Chromebooks, and you've also commented a couple times to me about Microsoft various handheld OSs and apps and stuff. What's your thoughts on this, Mr. Sunkast?
This is interesting because everybody remembers what a failure Windows RT was, and that was mainly because it didn't run Windows 32 apps. Everybody was like, well, how do I install this app, and how do I install that app? And you were very limited to just the App Store and the Universal Windows Platform apps, UWP apps. And at that time, they were still just being developed, and there really wasn't a marketplace for that. It's been a few years now since Windows RT, was a thing. It's long gone by now. So this is going to be interesting to see if rebranding a product that was essentially Windows RT to be a Service Cloud Book or whatever it's going to be called, to better compete with the Chromebook and a more mature app store now.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's interesting to see that they're doing this because of the RT history. That's exactly where my mind went, and you nailed it. Chris, you have yourself something that runs RT, don't you?
I do not, but if you remember, the Surface Pros like this one here, this is one of the first gen ones, came out in both Windows 8 and then Windows RT. This is Windows 8 when I upgraded to 10, but this is what the platform was that the RT came on, was a tablet like this. And pretty decent hardware, but RT, it wasn't going to happen. The whole reason that Microsoft's getting into this is because Google's been having success with Chromebook and classroom initiatives and things like that. There's been a lot of action there. This public school system here, because of snow delays and snow days and things like that, they've issued all the students Chromebooks. Those Chromebooks then tie into the school website, where they can go and do classwork and stuff on snow days, so they're missing less days. So there's a golden opportunity here to try and get in that same territory that Google's gotten in with Chromebooks. And by getting Windows in there and be like, hey, they know Windows, they're going to want Windows going forward, and they'll be forced to use Windows if they work in industry.
I have to say, one of the weird reasons that I actually am a little bit excited to this, even though I've had my Windows 10 headaches, is the fact that this might actually bring some eyes towards the Windows Store apps, because I think that that's something that have long been neglected. It's why Windows Phone 7 and Windows whatever phone and all this other stuff has never really taken off, because the apps have never been there. If all of a sudden you have this emerging market that are requiring these Windows apps, you're going to bring those developer eyes there, and maybe, just maybe, that will give the mobile division a little bit more of a chance, because if the apps are there, then maybe Microsoft can come in. I've liked a lot of what the Microsoft various phone OSs have done, but I've always figured that they'd be a dead end road, which is why I've never done it. So
you and about 1% of the active user base out there really love Windows Phone.
Well, let's put it this way. Windows is basically a legacy product at this point. It's something that Microsoft does not expect to make money off of anymore.
Right.
What they expect to make money off of is services. Services such as Office and Office 365. And this is something that they're definitely doing differently with these cloud books now. And by that, what I'm saying is that they are focusing for sure on making sure that Office apps will be able to somehow run on CloudBook. They have this thing called a desktop bridge, and they're really pushing for developers to have a way to develop applications for Windows Universal Platform or some sort of Windows platform that's workable on basically any Windows device and any device out there whatsoever. Really, is something that Microsoft is trying to do. So you will actually be able to run some Win32 applications on this CloudBook, and they're definitely going to start by using their Office apps to do this, which I think is going to make something like the CloudBook a lot more attractive to people than Windows RT ever was.
Well, and don't forget, Microsoft's been making a big effort, and we saw stuff on December about this, of saying that Windows 10 is going to work on ARM processors. They demoed, I want to say in December, I remember them doing a demo of an ARM processor running Windows 10 with full-blown Photoshop on it. So this is part of the intent to try and get Windows 10 out to more devices, so much like Sunkast said, they can go and sell those services. We talked about Office 365 subscriptions earlier, $100 a year for 5 users and a bunch of storage. That's where the money is right now, is selling people on the fact that Office is a product we can sell them each year. You've seen the same with Adobe and Photoshop and Lightroom and things like that. That's the new model. Instead of buying a new version of a software every third version, so about every 4 or 5 years, now you subscribe, you get the cutting edge version, and they get their $100 out of you per year or whatnot.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see from my interest is from the perspective of, will this be moddable essentially? Because we know that people have made Windows do all sorts of things that it's not supposed to over the years. And that'd be very interesting to see where this ends up. Will somebody be able to take this and make it do way more than it ever should?
It's possible, but I think that's highly unlikely. One thing to remember about this CloudBook, and I think this is something that is going to go along with what they're announcing on May 2nd. They're really pushing that event as an educational event, not necessarily any sort of Surface event or Surface product event, but more of an educational event. So I think really by announcing this CloudBook at this May 2nd educational event, they're really aiming to, get these CloudBooks into the educational world. That's something that a lot of Chromebooks now use. A lot of students use Chromebooks in their classrooms. They're assigned a Chromebook. I think that's something that Microsoft is taking on right there with their CloudBook.
I got to tell you, I am very tempted myself to get a Chrome, like a Microsoft CloudBook, because of the fact that I would really, really, really like to have something lightweight that I can just take with me, where when I'm on the road, I primarily remote back home and everything in order to do what I do. Except if I'm podcasting, I want to make sure that I've got a Skype connection, right? And I record things separately and everything. So you could bet that I'm going to be able to use Skype on a Microsoft CloudBook.
And I'll be honest, were I still college age, Chris, and I was going to college in a modern day, I'd be real interested in something like a Chromebook or the Microsoft CloudBook, because it's a relatively cheap device. And if I break that, I'm out $200 versus being out $1,500 or $2,000. I mean, that was one of the big things in college for me, is my laptop I took everywhere with me, but I knew I was screwed if I broke that, because my laptop was not cheap, because I did a lot of development work and things like that on it. Now, when I graduated and started working in industry and in my real life that pays for my pod life when I was traveling, I bought a netbook to take on the road with me, because if something happened to that, I was out $200 and I couldn't access the internet. I wasn't taking my good machine with me. So there is a market for these things. And I think it's smart for Microsoft to try and say, hey, Windows can fit in here just as well as Chrome can fit in here.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see what this brings, and we'll wait, and if it's announced at that event, we can speculate and talk a little bit more then. Until then, let's find out, though, who's being naughty, who's being uber naughty even.
Oh, I see what he did there. So there was an interesting story that the New York Times brought up. They've been doing a profile on the CEO of Uber, Travis Kalanick. I always mess up his name, but they kind of let out the news that in 2015, they might have angered Tim Cook and Apple a little bit. Have you guys heard about this?
I did not hear about this. I do not have it pasted into the show document, which we work on.
So did you hear about it before I pasted it into the show document? Let me rephrase.
No, I had not.
Okay, so if you aren't aware, there's some App Store guidelines that are out there specifically about tracking of users and leaving software on an iPhone after an app has been uninstalled to track users. Well, Uber kind of ignored that a little bit, we found out via the New York Times. And in 2015, when Tim Cook found out about that, he kind of got a little cranky about it. According to the Times, trying to find the exact quote here, Apple was onto his deception. Mr. Kalanick arrived at a mid-afternoon meeting with Mr. Cook. Mr. Cook walks in and says, "So, I heard you've been breaking some of our rules," in a calm Southern tone. Stop the trickery, he demanded, or Uber's app would be kicked out of Apple's App Store. So here is what they did. Mr. Kalanick told his engineers to geofence Apple's headquarters in Cupertino, California, to digitally identify people reviewing Uber's software in a specific location. Uber would then obfuscate its code from people within that geofenced area, essentially drawing a lasso around it to keep them in the dark. Apple employees outside of headquarters then kind of were reviewing the app and said, wait a second, what's this legacy code that's in here that could be used to track someone even after the iPhone has deleted the app? And Tim Cook kind of came down on Uber and said, no, you can't do this. And based off of the PR nightmare that Uber has had lately for hiring practices, sexual harassment kind of things, how they treat their drivers, now you've got a privacy concern coming out where they're basically trying to camouflage tracking features in their app and then leave them on your iPhone. For what purpose, we're not quite sure yet, but terrible timing on this news coming out. And again, another reason why a lot of people are going, Uber, yeah, I'm not sure I'm so comfortable with this. I know myself there's Lyft in town now, and I might defer a little more towards them now.
I want to ask you, Uber is a relatively new service in Canada and especially my area. So I'm going to defer to you two on this because you two are from the Marca States. I think that's the name of it now, Marca States. What is your thought on this, Sunkast?
And this is interesting because Uber as a company is very ethically borderline. Uber as a service is freaking fantastic. I've used Uber a couple of I've used Uber a couple of times and I've always been picked up within like 5 minutes. And like that's fantastic. It's always been a decent experience riding with an Uber. But again, the company has very questionable ethics. And just to put a personal story with this, the first time I started using Uber was weird because I don't ever remember signing up for Uber, yet I was already signed up for Uber. Well, I didn't think anything of it at the time because I was, away from home. I'm just using my phone trying to sign up. So I did the password reset thing, logged in and everything. And I didn't really realize this at the time, but somebody had used my email address to sign up with Uber. Some guy in Russia. And apparently he's done this to several other people. And unfortunately, Uber as a company is very difficult to get a hold of. And even after contacting them and trying to explain it multiple times to them, I've never necessarily gotten this completely remedied. And it's still hooked up with some guy in Russia.
Probably Andrew.
It's not Andrew.
It's probably
if it was, I wouldn't
Andrew.
give a crap.
That's frustrating.
It is. It's like, okay, and it's very frustrating because I have absolutely no way to change the name on the account. It's got some Russian dude's name, and I have no way to change it. Even though I've asked Uber, this is not me. Can you please change it? And they always come back, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Whatever. And it's like, I just told you, that's not me.
You should tell us what that name is, though, so that I can start calling you that, though.
I don't remember what it is. It was some weird name.
It's Igor Tchaikovsky.
But it's very frustrating. Uber as a company sucks. Completely sucks. Uber as a service is absolutely great.
Yeah, their service is great. Now, I will say locally where I am, the best thing that came from out of Uber is now there's competition locally and the cab companies have upped their game. The cab companies, you can actually go on an app and you can have them come and pick you up. Lyft is coming to town. So now we've got competition between two cab companies, Lyft and Uber, and it's been kind of nice in that regard. And now I can kind of sit there and go, you know what? I keep hearing these little shady practices that seem to be coming out of Uber and the fact that they just can't seem to get their crap together from a PR standpoint. And I can go, maybe I don't have to support that. I mean, if they're doing this on iOS devices, who knows what they did to Android? I'm not kidding. In all seriousness, I would love to know. I would love to have some white hat hackers go in there and take a better look at the APK for the Uber app on Android and see whether it's leaving any legacy code behind that could potentially be used to track a user even after they have uninstalled the app. I don't understand why you would put that in there, A, and B, what the justification is for doing that.
I guess we'll just wait and see if anybody else analyzes it. Like, it's all we can do at this point. But in any case, I'm glad that what I am glad is that Apple did put their fist down on that sort of stuff, because that's the sort of stuff that I've talked about before. I think Apple needs to make sure that they do contain their control to a degree, because that's a huge reason that people like them, right? A lot of their diehard market loves the security aspect of it. And I've talked before about how some of their changes are making people question that. And I think that this is really good that they did come down on that. Now, the question lies is, why was it allowed? What did they do wrong to allow this to stay in there in the first place, right? Because it was in there. It could have been a lot worse. They hid it
from Apple, so Apple couldn't see it when they reviewed it. That's where it gets even more shady, is they went, oh, we know that Cupertino, we'll just block that off so they can't see it there.
Right. But that's the problem. That comes down to an Apple process, right? Because they should have it diversified so that nobody can do that. And that's the bottom line, is that, you know, if they're the checkpoint, their checkpoint failed. And so that's why, you know, I'm not trying to shift the blame from Uber by any means, but I'm just saying, if people are going to if Apple's going to keep coming off as the secure company, they need to make sure that they fix that process, which I'm sure they have. I'm sure right away they did.
Let's be honest. This was 2015. This story happened that the Times is reporting on. I'm sure after they found where this issue comes into play, they have updated their app review process to account for the fact that someone might try and geofence out specific Apple computer locations where the review team sits. I'm sure that has been fixed. At the very least, they can just spoof their GPS location when they go to review these apps, much like people do right now for Pokemon Go.
Absolutely. But let's go ahead and move on to our next news point. Vladimir, what do you got next?
All right. So this is a really cool, fun story that I found this week. So Japanese toy maker Mega House is releasing a VR headset along with a downloadable app to play out your Dragon Ball Z fantasy. As you can see, I'm kind of a big Dragon Ball Z fan myself, so this is just awesome. Everybody knows, like, Google Cardboard and those headsets that you can plop your phone in to do this virtual reality stuff. Well, that's essentially what they're doing here. This Mega House toy company is releasing this headset that you stick your phone in, you download an app on your phone, and you basically play out your Dragon Ball Z fantasy. It also comes with a mat and hand sensor, so you can do, like, the energy balls and all that stuff, the Kamehameha stuff. It's cool. Just pretty cool. I don't know if you guys watched the video for this. I know it's all in Japanese, but to me, somebody that's a Dragon Ball Z fanboy, this is pretty cool. So this whole kit and game, it's called Bots New Characters VR Dragon Ball Z. It'll come out in Japan for about 12,000 yen, or about $110. And it features locations from the show and an AR overlay for you to simulate Saiyan destruction in the real world. So to me, this is pretty freaking cool.
You know, I don't know much about Dragon Ball Z, to be honest. And you know, the extent that I know is that I took the name Dragon Ball Z and I made it into a joke on the sidebar called Dragon Ball ZR, because of VR. But no, I don't know a lot about it, but I do know the fan base. And I have to say, I love seeing something like this, because I've said it before. I think VR has huge potential if we do it right. And I'm starting to see these things, these fun interactive things. And that's what it needs to come down to, in my opinion. It needs to be things like this, where it's just trying to give a fun activity for people. And we need to stop taking VR so serious, and we need to just make it about fun. And this is what I love. Right. This is what I love.
I realize that this is technically pretty gimmicky, but this also has the same principles as Pokemon Go, having some sort of element of a show that everybody has a cult following for and loves, and bringing that into the real world where you can play it in the real world in some form.
Right, and you're starting to see this with a few other things out there too, because I've talked about on other shows. I'm a big fan of Rick and Morty. I think it's one of the funniest things on TV right now. And earlier, they dropped a $30 VR game for Oculus Rift and the Vive, which is Rick and Morty Virtual Rickality. I had to double check what the name of the game was. Came out April 20th. But it looks like fun. I was sitting there looking at it. It's basically, they drop you in the world of Rick and Morty, and you have to go run errands for Rick and Morty and help them build gadgets and things like that. And there's little Easter eggs and stuff in there. I said, this is kind of a cool immersive experience. And this is how you kind of go and get fans excited about it, is you put a custom game out there that might only appeal to a small subsection of people out there, but that subsection are passionate about it. And they very well could have these devices already, because I'm pretty sure a lot of Rick and Morty fans are fairly tech inclined and of younger ages, so they might have VR, and that's how you bring people in. Now, the difference here is you actually have to have one of the $500 or $600 VR rigs plus a PC to run it, whereas what Sunkast is talking about is you buy one full rig in and of itself and you can play that game, which I think is a little easier sell for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, anyways, if you were nearby, I would encourage you to come tell me all about it and make me enjoy this, but unfortunately, it's out of my depth, so I'll let you two geek out.
Or Rick and Morty?
All of it. No. Rick and Morty.
I'd totally be down to do something like this, though. Like, I realize it's gimmicky and it's a toy, but, you know, the Dragon Ball Z fan of me was like, yeah, I like this.
Just wait for them to make a Star Wars one and think of all the money they'll make.
Ugh.
That's so true.
Well, I'm not saying that I'm just saying in general, not necessarily because I know Suncast wants to play a Star Wars VR game, but Star Wars is hot right now. I mean, and another VR game that's coming I want to play is the Star Trek Bridge Commander one, where you put the headset on and you're sitting in the captain's chair and you give orders to people and you walk around the bridge and interface with your crew. That's awesome. There's some really cool VR stuff coming.
So I got to tell you, like I said, I've said before, I got a daydream, and I still have not had a chance to really dive into it. And I pull it out like once a month sort of thing, or twice a month, and just have a little bit of fun with it for a bit. And then
that's because he's married, ladies and gentlemen.
I pull it out.
Sorry, that was inappropriate.
But no, anyways, one of the first things that I stumbled on when I first put on the headset was the Star Trek YouTube, where it's like taking you past different enterprises and things like that. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So then I showed it to my wife, who, again, she knows a thing or two about Star Trek. She apparently used to watch some Star Trek, but nowhere near like a Trekkie or anything like that. But I showed it to her. She loved it. She thought it was great. And every single person I go to show my VR headset to, she tells me to pull up that video because she thinks that it's just such a neat experience. And I think you're right. I think Star Wars, I think Star Trek, I think any of these space things, any of these sci-fi things to that degree as well, I think they've got really great use potential for VR, because really sci-fi is us really using our imagination. So it goes hand in hand with the VR. So I like it. Good idea, Chris. Market it.
I'm on it, boss.
All right, so let's move on to our extra news here that we've got a couple of quick picks here. Number one, this is a very, very exciting thing that I am so happy to talk about today. That's right. As you know, Apple is rumored to be coming out with a brand new handset this year. I know it's a new thing for them. They have not really come out with a handset every year. Brand new. But no, they are indeed apparently coming out with the iPhone 8 this year. It's going to be mind-blowing, so says everything.
I'm shocked and appalled.
I know, everybody's so shocked. Well, here's the rumors, is that they're not going to actually make their September deadline that they wanted, because there is apparently a severe supply shortage, mostly to do with the display change that they're implementing. Now, these are rumors at this point here, but they're propped up on a couple of sites which tend to have a good, credible history. And I'm very interested in that, because on the one hand, it is the iPhone 8 and it's supposed to be mind-blowing, so you want to make sure you get it right. On the other hand, they did that because it was supposed to correspond with their anniversary, their 10-year anniversary. And if we're not meeting September, we're pushing it towards the next year, and thus a little bit of a stretch.
But you know what? I would rather they put it off to get it right. I mean, by all accounts, the S8 is a really good phone, But here's the biggest thing. They couldn't get the fingerprint sensor to work underneath the screen, so they put it next to the camera on the back of the phone in an inconvenient, not really great place for you to put your finger, because you're putting it right over the lens if you're not careful. I almost wish they could have put it off another month while they tried to figure out how to get it right. And Apple's going to do what they have to get it right, because iPhone 8, it's a big deal. Samsung, the S8's a sweet looking phone. Google's coming in with the Pixel phone. The Pixel's really cool looking, but they're also having the same problems with display shortages. And there's a rumor going around they're trying to buy up all of LG's displays for the upcoming Pixel, and maybe even buy a stake in LG's display business. So displays is the big deal. I mean, and honestly, I picked up an S8 demo unit. The screen's gorgeous on it. And that's what you have to do. You have to put a gorgeous screen on these things, because that's what you interact with all the time.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I would rather see it done right. The thing that I just find a little bit interesting is that this has been rumored for a very long time, and it's kind of frustrating that Apple, of all people, can't get their supply chain together.
It's very disappointing if this ends up being true, because I need a new phone, and I've been kind of holding off, trying to wait for the iPhone 8. Because yes, the iPhone 7 is a nice phone, but let's be honest, the camera not as good as the iPhone 6 was. So to me, I'm kind of trying to wait and hold off till the iPhone 8 comes out. But if it's going to be delayed, I don't know that I can wait that long.
Yeah, I heard somebody say that actually, and I hadn't heard about that until recently, about the iPhone 7 camera not being as good as the 6. And I was so happy to hear that, just because my wife has a 6S, and she upgraded a few months before the 7 because she couldn't wait. She had to get it. And so it made me a little happy to go up to her and say, hey, guess what? Apparently the 7 camera actually sucks compared to yours. So way to go.
So Steven, when your wife gets the iPhone 8, will you do an unboxing video for Gonna Geek?
No, because they always open them in advance to stuff the SIM cards in there in Canada. It's annoying.
How annoying.
It's very annoying. But I could pretend I could go buy some shrink wrap and do. Maybe I'll do that. That's what I'll do.
So I will commit right now. I'm planning on getting a Pixel 2, assuming they don't screw it up with spec-wise, and assuming there's still a headphone jack on it. If I do, since it'll come directly from Google, I will attempt to do an unboxing for GonnaGeek.com.
By the way, what you were saying about that fingerprint sensor, that's also true on the Samsung Galaxy S8. It's right next to the camera.
Right.
So it's in an inconvenient place where if you got your hand there, okay, well, it's a little bit hard to reach. And if you're trying to reach it, you can easily mistake it for the camera.
This was the best thing they did. Put it on the back right here where my finger naturally sits. So when I pull my phone out of my pocket, my screen's unlocked. That's what they should have done on the S8, but they couldn't because of battery considerations. And since they couldn't fit it underneath the screen itself, they crammed it next to the flash, which I think it makes it work, but it's not great to use.
I agree, and I end up showing that to so many iPhone users who agree with me on that. You're Android. You know what? Yeah, I am Android. Let me show you this. And I pull it out and I show them the quick unlock, and they love it. It's so convenient. I still remember JS got the 6P, and I think it was the 6P. And he did, back in the day, JS, our former co-host on here, he ended up doing a quick on air. This is my first impressions after an hour of use or whatever it was. And he immediately talked about how amazing it was because all of us doubted it, and he hit it on the head. He said it perfectly. You pull it out of your pocket and your phone's unlocked because of where you keep your hands, and he nailed it 100%. It is the best spot for the fingerprint sensor, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I guess, yeah, Samsung's got to watch their batteries.
They really do. Do we really want the Galaxy S8 watch?
Wait, we can bring it back. It's got that red tint screen issue.
Oh, maybe we should. Maybe we should.
Fire.
Do it.
All right, well, let's go to our second quick pick here, which is one out of Canardia. That's right. Today, the Canadian Space Agency decided to announce that they have narrowed down their potential astronaut pool from 3,772 down to 17 folks. And then in the summer, they're going to narrow it down to the final 2. Now, I know people are like, well, this is not a very big deal. But the thing is, in Canada, we do have a fair amount of Canadian astronauts that do end up going up to space, but is nowhere near the plethora of other countries like America and Russia and elsewhere. But,
Please tell me you are not doing a reality TV show competition to become Canada's next top astronaut.
No, we're not. This is a proper selection pool. If you go and you care to Google it, you can see that it is fully very good skill sets on these people. There's a lot of good history with these people. They seem like people you would consider to be astronauts. And so it's just nice. It's exciting for me to see a little bit more space news coming out of Canada. And one of the people in the final 17 was born in my fair province of British Columbia. So that's pretty neat to see, but a lot of East Coasters over there too. And it's just going to be really nice to see more Canadians again, because as you all know, we have pretty much the most famous astronaut in recent history come out of Canada, Chris Hadfield. He was, I would argue, out of recent modern times, the most well-known Canadian astronaut. He was the one that did the Bowie thing.
Yeah.
So
everybody knows who he is.
Yeah. Well,
so
I don't know.
Are these people that don't get picked to be an astronaut, are they going to get participation trophies?
I would hope so. It is Canada. We're big believers in those participation trophies. Don't get me started on participation trophies. I got a couple of kids, and I just hear about this ridiculous participation trophy crap. You know what? I don't believe in participation trophies at all.
Well, you're not being a good Canadian, Steven.
Participation trophies suck. But let's go ahead and move on to our next segment.
Is that from when we won a podcast award?
Absolutely.
I.e. not the real podcast awards, the Gonna Geek Awards?
For the audio listener, I just stuffed my participation trophy from the Gonna Geek Awards last year on my backdrop.
Was that in a special box next to your computer for me to come pick up at a random time?
Somewhere. All right, here we go. All right, we're going to do something a little bit fun here today because we are in that...
I get scared when he says that right after playing the porn bump.
I'm waiting for Steven's mom.
I could invite her to an episode if you'd like. She'd probably do it. She'd probably come sit next to me. Is that what you want?
No comment.
I'm trying very hard not to comment. This is really putting my my goal to stop making mom jokes to the test.
All right. So what we want to do today is we are in that fun time of year where some television shows have ended. Some are just coming back from their winter break, and some are beginning, even, Netflix series and things like that. Some are just kicking off. So we wanted to take a few minutes here today to talk about the year in TV, what we're looking forward to, what we're excited about, what we thought was a bit of a miss and a failure, some of our disappointments. And we're just going to do a little bit of a roundtable discussion here just to check in, because we like to do this a couple times a year. And I'm going to go ahead and start it off here and talk about one that isn't really geeky, but I talked about it before. It was my favorite show that launched in September. It was called Designated Survivor. It was on ABC, and that's the one with Kiefer Sutherland. And I thought that it was by far the best debut of the season. Skip ahead a couple of years or a couple of months, and it has quickly become a hot mess. I gotta say, this is the biggest disappointment for me this year, because there's elements that I've really liked, and it is a show that I have often been on the edge of my seat waiting for more. And what I discovered was that we're about to start the last section of episodes, which will be the fourth showrunner of the season. They will have had in the first season 4 different showrunners, which explains to me the hot mess. And it's a disappointment to me, because I thought this show had a lot of potential, and then they went and they divided it up quite a bit, and it was a bit of a disappointment for me. So I just wanted to start off by mentioning that. Now, on the flip side, one of the shows that has actually given me a lot of excitement in the tail end as opposed to the beginning, and pretty much the opposite, again on ABC, is He's Not Here. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I gotta say, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't do me very well at the very beginning of the season. I was very disappointed with it. And I'm joking about checking if SP is here. I've told him that. I thought that the beginning was a bit of a mess. But this tail half of the season, they've done a great job. And to me, it's obvious that they're anticipating the end of a series. Now, there's been some developments with ABC's network as a whole that might lead towards a renewal. But to me, it's obvious that the folks behind it are preparing for the end of a series. And I think that they're doing a remarkable job. So if you were into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. before and you kind of fell out a little bit, if you can at all find the last couple of episodes, I think it was 3 episodes ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, you go check it out because you don't really need to know what else is going on. You can pick up the pieces or email out SP and he'll give you the backstory. I'll commit SP to that. So those are kind of a couple that were on my mind for that reason. I want to go to Chris. Chris, what's on your mind about TV shows?
So Designated Survivor, I started, then they took their break around December for 4 months and I never started up again. So eventually maybe I'll think about it, but based off what Steven's saying, I might just not start up again. One of the shows I did surprisingly enjoy, but sadly the public at large is not liking, is a comedy on NBC called Powerless, which is a tie-in into the DC universe. The premise being there's a company called Wayne Security run by Bruce Wayne's cousin Van Wayne, who's inept, that basically develops different technologies to help recover from superhero-related disasters and things like that and sell them to the common man. It's a really funny show, though. Ron Funches is in it, Danny Pudi from Community. There's other, and Alan Tudyk plays Van Wayne, who you might remember as Steve the Pirate, or I don't know, Wash from Firefly. I think it's a very funny show, but I don't think the public at large has really enjoyed it, so I'm kind of bummed. It's going to end its run after, I think they got like a 12-episode season 1 commitment, and that's probably going to be the end of it, but it's been a lot of fun for me. And then, gosh, I've dropped a lot of TV more than I've watched new stuff. I started watching Doctor Who just as an experiment with the newest episode to start this season. I haven't watched the second one yet, but it was enough for me to go, okay, maybe I'll give it a couple more episodes. Don't know if I'm going to commit to it. Legends of Tomorrow, though, that has been the best of the CW superhero shows. I am a little behind on it, haven't quite caught up, but it has been consistently the most fun. And they don't try and be like, oh, we need contrived drama so that we can do a spinoff or a tie into another episode across the network. No, it's just been fun. They've been in there. They've got an ensemble cast that are all characters I've grown to like and enjoy, even characters I hated to start the season. Now I'm kind of going, you know what? Maybe this Nate guy isn't so terrible. I mean, he's still kind of terrible, but not completely terrible anymore.
I agree with that, actually. I think that it has been the most fun.
You know what it is about Legends of Tomorrow is the fact that they know exactly what they are and they're not trying to be something more than what they are. And they have fun doing it. And I think that's what the biggest factor of that show being successful is. Unlike some other shows that are of the same caliber, but they try too hard and it just comes across as not working out.
You're talking about The Flash.
The Flash and a whole bunch of other shows out there that just doesn't work.
You know, one of the surprises, you just remind me, and it's actually just, I'll be something I watched tonight, just coming back from its winter break, is actually Gotham has been surprisingly good this year. I gotta say, like, Gotham has been, the tail end of last year, right into the beginning of this year, just had me right hooked. And it's been pretty good. And they've had a pretty in-depth story this year and whatnot, but the thing is they also still have I can just feel that sort of non-serious nature of it, and I think that they found their groove a little bit. So it's been a lot of fun for me, and I'm very surprised with Gotham.
So is this the place where I can take my shots at Fox?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Can we please talk about some other stuff too while Chris is talking about Fox? Because I have something that ties into that.
Okay.
So real quick, I decided to try 24 Legacy. I couldn't make it past about 3 episodes before I got bored with it. So the formula is tired. And then they're bringing back the X-Files again, and I really just can't get excited after they just kind of took a dump at the end of the last season they did.
I still have 2 episodes of X-Files on my DVR, but I will say that I actually thought that 24 Legacy got better after like 3. It was somewhere, I think it was like 4 or 5. It really, really had me in, and I lucked out because I think we had 3 episodes or 4 episodes stacked on the DVR before we started watching, so it was enough that I was like, I'm going to watch what's on the DVR. And then I was hooked, and I enjoyed it. I agree, though, the format is going to be tired for a lot of people who have seen Kiefer's version, and it's going to be very hard for people. But I thought that it was nice in a certain way myself. So.
And one last thing, and then I'll stop complaining so Sunkast can get his Fox shots in if he's got some. The Prison Break continuation, not terrible. I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. But it could be just because Wentworth Miller and Dominic Purcell, I enjoyed so much on Legends that carries over into Prison Break. But every time I see Dominic Purcell on screen, I expect him to sound like Heatwave and have like the growly, rumbly voice. And he doesn't. It throws me off. But I've actually enjoyed the return of Prison Break. Granted, we're only like 3 episodes in so far. It can still turn into hot garbage. It's been fun.
I never cared for the original. So I never really watched it.
I'm done complaining now.
All right, Sunkast, go ahead. Complain.
All right, so there's a huge mess of a show on Fox. It's called APB. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but my God, what a mess of a show. How the hell is APP still airing on Fox after how many episodes? Like 16 episodes they've aired of this thing. How many episodes did they cancel Almost Human? How many episodes in did they cancel Firefly? Like 3 episodes in, and now we're 16 episodes into this mess called APB, and Fox is still airing this. Like, what the hell is wrong with you, Fox, that you're still airing this mess of a show? You canceled the best sci-fi shows, Futurama, Firefly. You canceled those shows, and yet you're still airing this piece of crap show called APB. What the hell is wrong with you, Fox?
Tell us how you really feel, Sunkast.
Is it as bad as The Cape was? Because The Cape is the worst hot garbage I've ever seen on TV.
Oh, it's
and I stuck
worse.
with that for way too long.
It's worse than The Cape.
How is this possible?
My God. Just watch 1 episode and you know it's worse than The Cape.
Oh,
But,
wow. I kind of want to take this challenge now, I'll be honest.
I would love for you to watch just the 1 episode and give me your take on it, because it's just... I don't understand why anybody's watched this. I thought Scorpion was a terrible show. This is a terrible show.
No, Scorpion's terrible.
So I gotta say, when I look at Fox, I always try their new series. Very, very. What do I want to say? I basically assume that they're going to be crap, and so that's how I go into. That's how I go into all of Fox's new shows.
That's fair.
So I'm not surprised, but yeah,
there are a couple of other shows that I am liking. Face Off, which is on its 11th season. That's always a fantastic show. If anybody that likes sci-fi makeup and that sort of special Hollywood makeup stuff, it's always a great show. They've got their formula down. It never gets old. It's still cool. Lethal Weapon, I think that was a Fox show, and that was surprisingly good. Or maybe it was NBC. And that's actually been a really good show. I've liked that one, and I'm looking forward to that coming back. And you guys are probably going to disagree with me here, but MacGyver, the reboot that CBS is doing, it's not great, but it's still entertaining enough that I can watch it when I want something to watch and not care if I miss anything. Plus, it has Tristan Mays, which plays Riley Davis in it, and that's just pure eye candy.
I've heard it's a fun watch. I haven't gotten to it, and it's one of those, if they throw it up on Netflix at the end of the season, it might be something I put into my kitchen rotation, meaning when I'm cooking dinner, I'll throw it up on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see myself what I do when it goes on Netflix, because it hasn't brought me in yet, but I've been very tempted. I will say there was one that I don't know why I just thought of this now, but it was Ted Danson, Kristen Bell. I actually thought that The Good Place worked out pretty well, and I won't spoil anything, but the way they left this season gives it major possibilities to be flipped on its head for season 2. And it was a short season, and it was getting to the point that it was like almost a little bit tired. And then they changed some things, not changed things, but they moved the plot along, and it worked out really well. And then they were getting to the end, and you're like, okay, this is getting a little bit old. And then they did like this major head turn, and I'm very excited for season 2. I think it got renewed.
And the best thing about The Good Place is when that major twist happens, you sit there and then you start thinking about it and you go, holy crap, they planted all of the seeds from this since the very first episode. It's so well done.
It is.
It's hilarious. It's from one of the guys that was a showrunner on Parks and Rec, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
So
yes.
It is a very funny show. One other one I meant to mention, Sunkast mentioned Face Off. Have you seen like the quasi spin-off of Cosplay Melee they have on after that?
No.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
So it's very similar, only in this case, they take 4 cosplayers and they give them basically 8 hours to build one aspect of the costume, narrow it down to 3, and then give them 2 days to build the rest of a costume. So it's cosplayers that have to build a full cosplay costume, be it armor or based off a theme of like superheroes or supernatural or things like that. It's actually been really fun. It's hosted by Yvette Nicole Brown from Community.
Oh, yeah.
Who is a big geek. You've seen it at all the Comic Cons and stuff, getting real excited about costumes. Some of the stuff that those guys have developed when they create their own like original superheroes, original fantasy characters, really cool stuff. It's some really cool fabrication over a very short period.
That's incredible, the stuff that they do for cosplays. Like, I give it to anybody that can actually make a costume and make it look good. Because it's so difficult to fabricate something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not familiar with that, but yeah, I agree with you though, Sunkast. Very difficult. The other thing that I feel I need to give a bit of a shout out to here in a love-hate way is, you barely touched on it, but it's the Flash and Arrow. And the reason why I got to give a shout out to it is because I'm really excited for the Arrow back half of the, I don't know, SP called it a pod. I think that's what they call it on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the last pod here of Arrow, because we've seen a bunch of information about a returning character coming to the show, which, by the way, go to geeks.link/Deathstroke to see all about that. And
I'm so excited.
And I'm super excited about it. And one of the reasons why I'm excited about that is because Arrow is showing here with all of these announcements of all these returning players coming in. I'm believing that they are trying their hardest to get back to their roots. They said that about season 5 this year, was that they wanted to get back to the early structure of the show. And while there has been a whole bunch of backstory that has really irritated some people and, you know, trying to bring in new faces, I believe that the format that they did overall was very much similar to the season 1-2 format, late half season 1, season 2 format. I believe that they did try to get back to that format a bit, but it's been missing that familiar element, and I am so excited to see all of these returning names, and I'm hoping that's going to spill over to season 6, because I just would like to see, Arrow's ratings have been terrible, and I would love to see if season 6 is the last one, we really, really feel at home, just because I really felt hurt and like I was not thought of as a diehard Arrow fan when the Flash went and messed everything up within the Flareverse universe this year.
I totally agree with you on that. It's just, I don't think Arrow has necessarily captured what it had in the first 3 seasons. They took that dramatic turn in season 4, and they've not quite gotten back to that dynamic that they had with season 3. That season 3 was awesome. Season 2 was great. I'd like to get back to what they had with that ensemble that they had, but unfortunately, there's been a lot of things that have been going on that have been very detrimental to the show itself. And it's not necessarily the show's problem that caused that. It's just a number of factors within that DC universe, and the people that run that universe have made decisions that have been detrimental to Arrow and the Flash.
Agreed. And if you want to hear more about this, you can check out the Starling Tribune, which is the Arrowverse podcast of the Gonna Geek Network. They do stream live to geeks.live on Thursdays. There's been a lot of opinions about this year's Arrow and its impact that it's had, or the way it's been impacted by the Flash, and how it's it's felt as a diehard fan. And Chris, before we wrap up the show for the day, I got to give you a moment here to chime in about Arrow, because I know you also were a diehard fan like me.
Hashtag no Laurel, no Arrow. Do I get my Scooby snack because I did what I was supposed to?
Yeah.
Where's my Scooby snack? I did what I was supposed to.
There you go.
I love Laurel. She's the best. I love Laurel. Bring her back. No, in all seriousness, I'm really excited for the back half of the season because they're bringing back some awesome characters. We're getting some payoff of the introduction of Talia al Ghul. It looks like they could be going out with a bang to try and set up season 6 to be strong. And if you go and look at the ratings, they really need to, because it's the weakest in the ratings lately, Arrow.
Very weak. Very weak. But that is going to take us towards the end of the show. Before we wrap up, we'll just remind you that you can get in touch with us through a variety of different ways. You can reach us at 567-343-GEEK. You can tweet us at GonnaGeek. And you can find us at facebook.com/GonnaGeek. Let us know, what have you been into? What have you been excited about? What disappointed you? What are you looking forward to? And just tell us, and maybe we'll read out your feedback on a future episode. But let's go ahead and go around the table here to plug or promote or do whatever we'd like to do. Turn it over to our guest of honor first, Sunkast.
All right, I'm going to do this as quickly as I can. First, you can check me out at gfqnetwork.com. Follow me on Twitter at Sunkast. Yes, that's spelled with the K like you see on the screen here. But also, if you can, go check out my nephew's website, elijahbub.support. He has type 1 diabetes, and we're trying to raise some funds for him to get a service dog. These things cost about $20,000, and they are incredible. They can detect diabetic issues like 15 minutes before they actually happen, so that my nephew can get into a safe spot if he's going to have a seizure or something is going bad and he needs to have more insulin or get his blood sugar up. But again, these dogs cost about $20,000. So if you have the ability to donate and help out, just go to elijahbubb.net. That's ELIJAHBUBB.support.
And I always do this whenever you're on, because I want you to do it one more time. What is the URL one more time?
It's elijahbubb.support, ELIJAHBUBB.support.
Well, I hope that you reach the target that you need soon, Sunkast.
Thank you.
Chris, do you got anything that you want to plug or promote?
I'd just like to suggest folks to go check out a lot of the awesome content we have over at the Gonna Geek Network. There's a variety of awesome, geeky, nerdy shows, and we are always adding new content. And if you do have a podcast and you're looking for a geeky home, check it out. Go over to GonnaGeekNetwork.com, and there's all the directions on how to submit your podcast to become potentially part of the Gonna Geek Network.
And I'm just going to go ahead and take a moment here to plug space and science, because SP's not here today. So I got to do my part and make sure that space gets the recognition that it deserves. So I am plugging space itself.
The final frontier.
But that is indeed the end of episode 189 of the official GonnaGeek.com show. I'm Stephen Jondrew. I have a participation trophy.
I'm Sunkast. He stole my line.
I'm Chris, and you guys all stole my line too.
You want another line? Nope.
Steven's wrong about Empire. Bye, guys.
Hashtag Steven Right Drew. Bam!
Steven Wrong Drew.
Bye.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the GonnaGeek.com show. If you enjoyed it, please give us a 5-star review in iTunes or a thumbs up on YouTube. We encourage you to send your feedback by email to show@GonnaGeek.com. You can find our entire archive at GonnaGeek.com/show. And while you're there, why not check out all of the other geeky content on the Gonna Geek Network? Want to chime into our live chat? Join us Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at www.geeks.live. The music heard on this show is by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. This show was produced and edited by Stephen Jondrew of Gonna Geek Productions. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.